All right. Welcome back to the House Relate podcast. I'm here with Megan Davis. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm
For
excited.
me too. Yeah, this is a topic that I've been wanting to learn more about. I don't have kids, but I have friends who have kids. I have a nephew now, and I know of moms who really go through it with no one tells you this post-pregnancy or pre-pregnancy or during pregnancy or how it's going to be for your mental health and the hormones and all the things that come with this. So it's like we all figure it out as we go. No one really gave us a manual. So I was like, you know what? It
Mhm.
would be great to know what to expect with all the things when you're expecting and post expecting and everything else.
I mean, this is definitely a topic that I'm really passionate about because maternal mental health, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are being talked about a bit more, but there's still a long ways to go. And for anybody who is a general therapist or service provider, or even just like human being, we're all going to come into contact with somebody who is going to go through the perinatal period. And so it's just helpful to know a little bit about what comes into play in terms of mental health. So whether it's a friend that you're supporting or family member or client or, whoever, it is definitely a period with lots of different changes and transitions.
Yeah. What is different even about like, because you mentioned the anxiety, OCD, and depression that comes with this? What do you think
Mhm.
is different for moms than maybe the general OCD, depression, anxiety that might show up for others? Like, what do you think those differences are?
I think there are definitely differences, and there are a lot of different layers. Of course, with anxiety and mood disorders, they can happen outside of the perinatal period. And by perinatal, I mean kind of the during pregnancy and then in the postpartum period, which is the year after giving birth. You tend to see the typical symptoms, but on top of it, we also have to factor in the hormonal changes that are happening, the sleep deprivation. A lot of people who are pregnant aren't sleeping well. And then certainly we know that's the case in the postpartum period, as well as just from the societal context of all of the different messages that moms and new parents are getting about what it means to be a parent or a mom, what, the ideal is around that. So I think all of those factors are really points that I touch on with clients when I'm working with them during the perinatal period.
What are some of the points that clients are talking about? Like, are they reporting, either symptoms or in life when they're coming to see you?
Yeah, so oftentimes I am seeing clients who come in, maybe they're referred by their OBGYN or a friend or maybe their psychiatric provider. Just a lot of it is really feeling like completely overwhelmed, not knowing really kind of like how to handle not just having maybe depression or anxiety or OCD, but then also trying to handle it while trying to take care of a little human. And oftentimes clients, again, come in extremely overwhelmed, really not knowing how they can be taking care of themselves and also having a really difficult time, maybe kind of like shifting expectations for themselves to be something that's a little bit more realistic. I have a lot of clients who I kind of call it like the martyr mom syndrome, where they feel like they have to do everything and do everything perfectly. Maybe prior to getting pregnant and having a baby, they were really high functioning go-getters. Like they were the people that got stuff done. when you throw in the curveball that just comes with pregnancy and postpartum and having a human that is separate from you that has their own, timetable and plan, it can be extremely challenging. So I would say those are kind of like the main things that clients come in for.
Yeah. Because what do you think those expectations are typically?
Mhm. Yeah, I think generally, at least in kind of like our capitalistic society, it's I have to be productive, I have to get things done, I have to do it myself. Otherwise, people will think that I am not good enough or I'll feel not good enough and expectations that uh, again really that like I have to do it all and I have to do it all well and perfectly. And if I don't, then I'm not a good enough mom, there's something wrong with me, I'm not doing a good job.
I heard this statement that was describing the individualist society versus a collective society. And they're like, you're a hyper individualist when you're the only one who can do it all and do it well. And then you complain about how you have no help and you are so stressed out and you're tired. But if someone were to take that task from you, then you say, no, 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 but you can't do it because I'm the only one who knows how to do this well.
Mhm. Yeah, that can be extremely tricky, especially in couples in the postpartum period. There are only 24 hours in the day, and we need sleep. It's definitely incredibly important for our emotional regulation and physical healing in the postpartum period. And countless other things. But I do see a lot of moms in particular who are like, this is how this particular task needs to be done. And it can be a real struggle to hand that over to their partner, to, maybe family members who are coming to help kind of in those first few weeks or months, if they're lucky enough to have, that help. And that can be, yeah, definitely a challenge and something that we really work a lot on in terms of like acceptance of, okay, this is uncomfortable. This particular task might not be done my way or what I see as the right way, but if it's done just well enough, we gotta kind of think about like the long-term effects of trying to take on everything and do it ourselves and not delegate.
That done is better than perfect kind of slogan
Mhm.
starts to come into play.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned acceptance, and you are well versed in acceptance and commitment therapy.
Mhm.
Is this a modality that you typically use with people who might be struggling with some of the, let's say, pre or postpartum OCD, anxiety type symptoms?
Yeah, I love acceptance and commitment therapy, and I think I was really drawn to it just as a mother myself because what we really focus on are, identifying, okay, like what's important to you? What are your values? Which we know kind of during the postpartum period, it's like a huge shift in so many different things. And definitely it can be a shift in values. So really identifying, okay, what's important to you? Maybe previously it was your career and work, and maybe it's not that that completely goes away, but that like shifts a little bit in terms of priorities. And then we also really focus on what are those like thoughts, those inner narratives, those internal sensations, feelings that you work really hard to try to get rid of that ultimately end up moving you away from your values. So that's where the acceptance piece comes in. Sometimes it is accepting, okay, I'm feeling really uncomfortable with, letting my partner take over this task, or really uncomfortable with feeling guilt that I have to, set this boundary with this family member, and kind of learning to be comfortable with discomfort, as well as we do a lot of work around identifying what are those internal narratives that don't really work in the long run. We don't argue about are they true, are they untrue, but are they workable? And if they're not, how do we create some space between ourselves and our thoughts? Because we are separate from our thoughts.
It's like looking at this thought of I have to be able to do it all and do it all well, as this is like a shirt that I can buy, or I don't have to purchase it and I can put it back and I can
Mhm.
maybe choose a different one or nothing at all. It's like this is a choice to use it or to choose something else that might work better.
And another part of acceptance and commitment therapy is mindfulness. So being really aware of the present moment, trying not to judge or criticize whatever's showing up. And that takes a lot of practice, especially in the postpartum period. But I think being able to notice, again, what is showing up. And I like to think of our thoughts as getting the mail every day. We have to go through the mail, sift out. Maybe they're like junk mail thoughts that we can just toss. They're there, we got them, but we don't necessarily have to let those dictate what we do the rest of the day. We might have thoughts that are kind of like greeting cards that we can sit down and enjoy reading, or a magazine. We might have thoughts that are like bills that do need some attention. We do have to pay our bills. But again, we get to kind of like sift through the thoughts and see what does require more of our attention and what can kind of be tossed, just like the junk mail.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because it is going with what needs to be paid attention to versus what can maybe be loose in the grips of, and kind of like I can let that go.
Mhm. Yeah. And when we're, sleep deprived, maybe feeling anxious about this new role in that postpartum period, like our minds are saying, like, none of this is junk mail. It is all like super important for me to pay attention to, which kind of just exacerbates that sense of urgency and that anxiety. So a lot of work with my clients is again coming back down to, okay, maybe it's not all urgent.
Mm. What what do you think happens for new moms where it feels like it's all urgent? Like, is it something that's happening biologically? Is it something that's happening I almost think this like evolutionarily. I'm like, is this something that has maybe like once served because it's like I am hyper aware of all my surroundings and making sure that I am protecting this child with all my might. And now that we're not in being chased by tigers and now it's different kind
Mhm.
of lifestyles, like I kind of wondering what happens for moms, for new moms, that all this starts to kick in.
Yeah. And again, I think it's really layered because you do have the physiological part of just kind of like the hormonal changes, like the ways that the body is changing in all of the hormones, especially in the postpartum period. Like it's amazing what they can do. They help, you know, milk come in for like breastfeeding. They help us kind of like navigate those initial bonding moments with a baby. So they're important, but they can also, again, kind of like add another layer to maybe the newness and the anxiety and worrying of kind of this new role. One thing that I hear from clients all the time is like it feels like such a big responsibility to raise this little human being, and it can feel like there's a lot of pressure to do it well and to do it right, and we're getting again all these different messages about what that looks like. So yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of those factors. And then again, coming back to the sleep deprivation, it's so difficult to be kind of like mindful or to use our problem solving skills or contact that, prefrontal cortex part of our brain that can think clearly through different situations when we're not when we're not sleeping well, when we are sleep deprived. So yeah, lots of those different factors. And it can even be exacerbated if there is trauma during the birth, whether it's, an unexpected C-section, maybe the baby has been in distress, or, some parents don't get to take their babies home or they have to go into the NICU. So, yeah, there are lots of those different factors that come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. For parents and moms who have struggled in the birthing process, what are some things that therapy can help them with?
Mhm. Yeah, so I do see a lot of moms who have experienced trauma, and typically what I will do is support them in, kind of getting basic needs met as a baseline. And once that is done, we work a lot on grounding skills and ways to help themselves when they are feeling really dysregulated or anxious, or maybe having flashbacks or anything like that, that they can come back to the present moment. Another big piece of it is really processing through the birth trauma in therapy. A lot of times, what I will do is have their partner come in and kind of do that processing as well, because it can help fill in or kind of like add in the missing puzzle pieces or information. And when we're able to have a little bit more of that like information and complete view of like what actually happened, it can help us be able to integrate that and kind of move move through the trauma a bit more easily. Sometimes it means also engaging in different exposures around different triggers. So, for instance, in the past, I've had clients who, like, just driving past the exit where the hospital was would give them this physiological response. So we would, in addition to the in-session work that we were doing, kind of work on, okay, can you ground yourself and still expose yourself to some of these triggers, and ultimately be able to learn that, okay, I can feel this discomfort, but I'm not back in that really scary situation again.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, but I, I'm just thinking about like how challenging that must be for those individuals who have experienced things like trauma on top of having a newborn, on top of not sleeping well, on top of just trying to get basic needs met for self and for others, and now we're driving past the exit and now I'm having this trauma response. Like I can just imagine the multitude of layers that's happening for someone and how it can feel so big.
Mhm. Yeah. So I feel like in my work with new moms, a lot of it is really just like acknowledging all of these different layers, providing education on how they can affect mental health, and kind of doing a lot of validating and normalizing that, like, yeah, especially if there is some type of trauma, that, your body did what it needed to do in this situation. And so a lot of it is that educational piece for them and then also their partners.
So, can we talk about the partners aspect to this too?
Mhm.
Because for the non-birthing partner, like what might they need to know
Mhm.
and what might help them in this process too?
Yeah. So I think it's incredibly important for the partners to be aware of what to look out for in terms of potential perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. What we do know is that 1 in 5 birthing people will develop a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. So it's a lot more common than people think. And I guess on the good news is that they can be very treatable. So with the correct support, new and expecting parents can see improvement pretty quickly. If your partner is not sleeping at all, that is a huge red flag. If they're saying that they're not feeling themselves, or there's a big shift in their appetite or mood with the hormones, like there can be increased tearfulness. But if that's continuing for more than 2 weeks, like that's definitely when we start to have more concerned. If they are reporting like racing thoughts or just getting really stuck on certain thoughts, that's something to look out for. Any like avoidance of like wanting to hold their baby or be around the baby, that might be a warning sign of a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. Now, we'll use the term PMAD because that's a mouthful to say. But also, I think a lot of what can be helpful is kind of from a preventative standpoint of having conversations before the baby's here, when there aren't quite as many changes going on, having a pretty good idea of what a postpartum plan could look like, what those supports could be, and to a degree of who is going to be in charge of what, because there are going to be lots of changes in terms of just the basic who's going to do the laundry, the household task, who's going to walk the dogs, who is going to make dinner. If the partner is able to be involved from the very beginning, like while the new mom is pregnant, it can be incredibly helpful to have those conversations ahead of time.
Setting up the expectations and dividing roles and responsibilities to be able to move forward in a more cohesive way. Then we're already stressed, and then adding a stressful event and we're figuring it out. So it's almost like having a pre-plan as best as one can, and then going into this with, okay, we had a plan and we can pivot accordingly, but at least we know what to somewhat do from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I guess in working with couples, a lot of times couples with kids, they'll talk about the household chores and just the all the labor that goes into it because, not as adults, we're taking care of ourselves and then adding kids. And it's now you have more laundry, you have more dishes, you have soccer practice and all these other things to kind of go to. So it's interesting because it's like, okay, we're now essentially running a business within the household. And who's taking on what role? Who is taking on the CEO job and going, okay, here's the calendar, here's what needs to be done. Who's taking on the operations role? Who's taking on the Uber role and being the Uber driver that week? Or who's taking on the chef role that week? So it is that there becomes so many different roles to make sure that everyone's basic needs are getting met and beyond. But it is very much like these are the basics that we have to operate on day in and day out.
And that can be such a struggle, especially the first year. It is helpful to have a general plan, but as we know, life throws curveballs. And during times of stress or something new, we tend to kind of revert back to what we know. So what we saw our parents doing, or our primary caregivers, those roles growing up. And yeah, it oftentimes can just feel very transactional of like, okay, you need to do this particular task, or I'm going to take on this, that it can be really difficult to feel connected during that time.
It's not sexy, but it is necessary. It can seem like we are doing way more of just what tasks need to be done than we are having the more emotionally connected conversations or things to really feel like a couple again. Because when you're just figuring out how to be a parent, especially that first year, it's like, here's this whole life experience or this whole experiential way of being a new parent. And it's coming with a 24/7 clock.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that is another thing that I think can be really tricky in terms of just like, again, the logistics around just keeping, a family functioning and kind of moving along. That's one thing, but also a lot of new moms, whether they're breastfeeding or they're physically, healing from a C-section, or just like the physical toll that labor and delivery takes on her body. eh, she can just really feel like touched out and depleted and feel like, okay, my partner's here. Like, I know logically I need to, connect with them in some way, but I am just feeling like I have nothing else to give right now. And so that's often a dynamic or something that I hear showing up a lot for the moms that I work with.
What do you think would help moms heal from even the physical experience of childbirth? Because it still seems wild to me that a lot of companies are like, 6 weeks, you're good, right? And I'm like, this person just birthed a human. That seems wild to be like 6 weeks, right? That's the time it takes. And then on top of, again, rest is going to be a little bit more lacking now that there's a newborn. But
Mhm.
what do you think would best help new moms in the first, let's say, 8 weeks of having a child?
It's mind blowing that like 6 weeks, that's when most women kind of go back and have their checkup and then are cleared to have sex or to run or do whatever. Yeah, your body has just like gone through this amazing, but also just very strenuous experience. And one thing that I just really highlight a lot is sleep. And again, I know people are probably like, well, like that just seems so unattainable, as a new parent when my baby's up every 2 hours or, breastfeeding, especially in the beginning, takes forever because, babies are still trying to get used to, that action. But yeah, sleep is so incredibly important. So whether somebody is breastfeeding or not, I encourage women and their partners to really discuss, okay, what is it that can help me get potentially like a 4 hour of sleep? And sometimes that does mean, yeah, having like shifts. Sometimes it does mean the partner who isn't breastfeeding to, use a bottle or things like that. Because again, when we are not able to get sleep, that can really increase the risk of exacerbation in terms of physical symptoms and the mental health symptoms. But definitely sleep, definitely making sure that there is some type of support in place for just getting some type of like nourishment. um, so usually the new moms that I work with, I'm like, okay, you're create stations, like whether it's, next to your sofa in your living room or your bedroom or whatever, just put like granola bars or something because it is so important to eat to make sure that you're hydrated. And all of those are going to help out with kind of like the physical healing, but also, of course, like rest. And again, that can be really difficult, especially for new moms who are used to just doing all the things or very frequently just had a hard time like relaxing and not being busy. So that's where therapy can be really helpful to kind of, prioritize that and again, create some acceptance around what that looks like.
Yeah. It's because the mom who has a hard time sitting still before becoming a mom. And then it's okay, I know I need rest. And there's so many things that need to be done. And I know I need rest. And oh my gosh, the bathroom's a mess. And I know I need rest. And I really wish I could just go on that walk if my body's feeling okay. And that fits this like kind of calibration of I know what I need. And there's so many other things that need to be done.
Yeah. And I will fully admit, like, I was one of those moms Like I was always very much somebody who liked to get certain things done. I didn't like to sit down for long periods of time, and I liked being really active. So it was definitely a struggle when I had both of my children. I'm well outside of the postpartum period, but it is so essential to rest from a physical standpoint as well as emotional. And it does mean handing over tasks or letting go of maybe certain expectations where, yeah, maybe the laundry isn't going to get folded for the next few months. It doesn't mean it's always going to be this way, but maybe we're literally just going to be switching, kind of digging through the clean basket of clothes to put something on, and maybe they're going to have wrinkles.
And that it's like and we're gonna breathe that in and let it be okay. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
What has it been like for you to be a mom?
It is, I don't think there's a word in the English language that really can encompass what it has been like. It's, I will say it's been an adventure and a journey, and it has been a roller coaster. There are certain aspects of being a mom that I love, and I love, my children and the opportunities that I've been able to grow as just like a human being and really kind of forced to get out of my comfort zone. And there certainly have been many, many aspects that have been incredibly difficult. I remember, like, in the first few months, like postpartum, when my son, he's my oldest, would be, crying in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to last forever? Like, I remember feeling like, he's going to be off in college and still like crying. Like it just felt like it would never end. And, I think just like looking back, it's amazing all the different ways that motherhood has changed me. And yeah, any of the moms on Instagram or social media or, just hearing people, talk about only the positive aspects. I'm like, okay, like my people are the ones who can commiserate in terms of like how hard it can be. Because I think it's so important to be authentic and realistic around kind of, I don't think any experience is, you only get the good or the bad. Like they're two sides of the same coin. And I think that's just the human experience. So.
Mhm. Yeah. It seems like it's like thrusted self-actualization because as you're saying this, it sounds like kind of laugh about like, oh my gosh, is this ever going to end? And it can feel like I'm so tired and all I want to do is sleep and this keeps happening. And am I ever going to be able to sleep again? Am I ever going to be able
Mhm.
to start to feel like myself again? Is that kind of how it was?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, as I reflect on just being a mom, my oldest is 11 and my youngest just turned 9 yesterday, actually. It is amazing to see just like, again, all the ways that I've changed, that I've been able to see them change. And it really has helped me kind of hone in and become more clear on my values and what's important, what I want out of life and what I want to teach my children and things like that. So it's, yeah, an amazing experience, amazingly hard and amazingly beautiful in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Is it simplifying to what matters?
Hmm. Yeah. And I think any type of like huge change or life transition, I mean, it's almost like a spiritual moment. Like your world is just rocked so much that you kind of, it's hard to explain, but yeah, you really come back to the foundation of what is important and what does matter and how do I want to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like I was actually just having this conversation today, and it's someone being me, like I single, unmarried, don't have kids, and there's a lot of possibilities that could happen any given weekend. But then when I'm watching and looking at friends who are having families, it's like there is not many possibilities of what's going to happen this weekend because we have nap times and diapers and feedings, and we have a structured schedule that is beyond ourselves. It does kind of feel like, oh, wow, you're so grounded in what matters because what matters right now is raising a human. When I think like minimalism, I also think like the freeing aspects of that because it's like there's not much choice and this is what we're doing and this is what's happening because this is what matters right now. And in a
Mhm.
few years, something else might matter, but here's what's happening right now. It like takes it to
Mhm.
a very grounded presence.
And I think the cool thing is, I mean, we are, when we're born, and especially as like very young children, like we are so mindful. Like a 2-year old, a 1-year old, they are so present moment. They're like, I am hungry and I need it now. And if I don't get it, like the world is going to end. And so I think, yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of that, like just seeing and being in a relationship with a human who is so present moment and mindful and grounded, obviously that kind of rubs off on us.
I like to say that kids are just really present with their emotions and they might be really big at times, but they ride the waves and they are
Mhm.
very present in what they're feeling.
Yes. Yes.
Is it fun to learn too from them?
Yeah, it is. I it, just like reflecting, especially on my daughter who just turned 9. She has a very different personality than I would have ever expected from something that like I could produce. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm like, how are you, my child? Like, I feel like you were so different from me, but different in a good way. She's like incredibly assertive and self-assured. Like she has been ever, I don't know, since she could talk. And it can be challenging at times, but I love watching her like model boundaries and kind of, using her voice to be heard and things like that.
That is very cool. Yeah, it's like in family therapy, the process of individuation, of finding self within the family unit and how to have that, this shiver needs of security and exploration. And it sounds like that it's almost like observing your child going like, oh wow, like you are different. Like you and like it's like these admirable qualities within the security of the family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I can say that right now until she wants to exert her boundaries.
Yes, yes. Until wait, until she's telling you no. And it's like, well, yeah, that's fun. What if you were to give the most direct, unsolicited advice or solicited, because I am asking this, to new moms? Let's say they're in the first year of motherhood. What would the advice be?
Um, my advice would be to use your village. And if you don't have one, see what you can do to create that. Try to not be so hard on yourself. I think self-compassion is something that's so difficult yet so necessary, especially that first year. It is a completely new experience. And oftentimes we can feel like we're failing or not doing it right. But we have to remind ourselves that this is something that we've never done before in parenthood and motherhood. You can plan for it, you can logically think about how you want to show up, But when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, it's a much different experience. So I would say be just really kind and gentle and gracious towards yourself.
What advice would you give for the next stage of toddler going into preschool, kindergarten?
My advice would just be to, again, try to show yourself as much compassion as you can because it is going to be challenging. And most of the things that come out of your toddler's mouth are not going to make logical sense, and that's okay. Take care of yourself and allow others to help out and help take care of you.
Mm. Yeah, Esther Perel has this article around the seven verbs of intimacy. And she says that receiving is one of the most vulnerable verbs we can possibly do. And when I think about vulnerability being, can also feel like a risk. It can feel like I am helpless or I do need help. I don't have everything all together all the time. And how it's like vital. And like you said, like, it does take a village and it's so necessary during our most challenging times. And at the most challenging times, we want to have it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely think that is so important because a lot of the women that I work with and myself, and when I talk to friends and other mothers, it can be so difficult to ask for help and to receive help. And I think it's also important to think about how nice it feels to be able to give to someone else and what we're denying those around us when we aren't asking for help or accepting that help.
Absolutely. Yeah, that other people do want to be able to share their gifts with you. That's a good frame to it too. And then advice for moms who are in, let's say, maybe the stage of the year in now of their kids are in grade school, maybe early middle school. What advice would you give moms?
I don't think it differs too much, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But again, self-compassion all the way. Another thing that I didn't mention that is important, kind of like throughout the stages, is that, you know, while we are mothers, that's one role that we have. And so I think it's really important to nurture the other parts of ourselves because if we don't, we can put a lot into like just this one role, which isn't bad, but I think it's important for us to nurture other aspects of ourselves, whether it's a hobby or a certain aspect of our career or other relationships, because we need that as well. And especially in that transition of being pregnant to now having a baby, there's a lot of grief that comes with that and a lot of shifts in identity. So, regardless of whatever developmental stage your child is at, as they're kind of individuating and identifying their own identity, it's okay to take that time for moms to come back to who they are as well.
Absolutely. The role of mom tends to get a lot of the spotlight, but to make sure that other parts of us or other parts of mothers get other aspects of that spotlight too. Anything else that you want to add or anything that we didn't cover?
The transition to motherhood or just parenthood in general is so difficult and such a huge adjustment on multiple levels that it never hurts to reach out and to talk to somebody, whether it's a friend or family member who you feel like you can trust or a professional. It's really important to get that support around all of these changes. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are much more common than we think, and they're not always identified by medical providers. If you really feel like something is off, there are lots of ways to get connected to a provider. Postpartum Support International is a great resource for different support groups, or they have a provider directory for providers who are trained to work within the perinatal period. Non-birthing partners can experience anxiety, depression, OCD, and a lot of the same things. So you don't have to be the one actually physically going through childbirth to potentially develop postpartum depression or postpartum OCD.
Right. Yeah, I think that's also important to note because, like you're saying, it is parenthood. Yeah. Well, a lot of times mothers will be the ones to experience the biological and physical changes. It's also that there is a shift into parenthood that does come with grief, identity shifts,
Mhm.
the things that come with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll definitely link those resources in the show notes along with your website. And what is your Instagram?
It is Megan Davis Psychotherapy. So the name of my practice. I know it's super original, but yeah, it's my Instagram.
I love it. You know what? We just talked about simplicity, and I love simple. It's your name, it's searchable. My link is also my name. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah. All the names that I really liked were already taken. So I was like, you know what? It's just gonna be my name.
Lovely. It's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you delving into this topic with us.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me again. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share more about this.
Yeah, this is such an important topic. I'm so glad that we did this.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. And in the meantime, stay connected.